Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're specifically going to answer the same question, the question that was raised by DBJ on RPGs. If you guys don't know DBJ on RPGs, he's been around for a long time. I think he might have been covering Dungeons and Dragons and the tabletop role-playing game community for as long as I have, and I've been doing it for 8 years, right? So he's a person of color. Which is important because it can be rare in our space. RPG Elite has talked about this. That RPG is an African American, and he said that and he listed a whole bunch of reasons that African Americans don't generally kind of connect to Dungeons and Dragons. So, which is very interesting. Actually, specifically the tabletop role playing games, right? So, DBJ of RPG, I would love to suggest you go over to his channel, but I don't know what to suggest anymore because there's just so many dramatic changes. Professor Dungeon Master just is now, calling himself Professor DM, right? And so he's calling himself Professor DM. And if I send you anybody's channel, I don't know what's going on in their channel because so many people are abandoning Dungeons and Dragons, and we're openly hearing the term D&D refugee right now, right? People building their raft to go off to Fargladia, right? I've never seen anything like this. This is like if there were American refugees, like people who were building rafts on the shores of America to go off to a place that was better. That doesn't happen because no one in America, everybody in America knows, there are people who build rafts and try to make it to America because they know it's going to be better. The number of countries it happens from are a high number, right? But there's nobody building a raft on the east or the west coast of America to go to another better country because they know there is nowhere better, right? But that's the foolishness, in my humble opinion, that we're seeing with the OGL, with the OGLers, the OSR, and the orcs right now, right? You're seeing them building rafts to go to Fargladia, this magical land where tabletop role-playing games don't need to be paid for, and brands don't matter, and and money doesn't matter, and it's all just it's all communism and relativism and lawlessness, frankly. Better term would be decriminalization, right? Only these laws matter, right? Well, a few of them we'll just pick and ignore, right? We are there. It is absolutely incredible, okay? All right, so DBJ asked this amazing question. He said, he asked two questions. Will Dungeons and Dragons ever be the same, and will we recover? And I want to address the first question. So I want to answer his question. Will Dungeons and Dragons ever be the same? The answer is no. Absolutely not. Dungeons and Dragons is never going to be the same. And the reason why is The Who has a great song, and it says, "We won't be fooled again." Right? And so Dungeons and Dragons right now, okay, it has two primary key roles, right? The roles that matter. The D&D designer, the dungeon master. These roles are integral. Without people taking these roles and picking these roles up, Dungeons & Dragons does not exist. That's today, okay? What has changed and is now going to change Dungeons & Dragons for absolutely forever is the Sentinel, okay? This is a dungeon master, okay, who says, I am going to completely fulfill my role as dungeon master. That crown will remain on my head, right? But the bracers of the Sentinel will be put on, right? And what is the Sentinel, the Dungeons and Dragons Sentinel? In my humble opinion, this is a role that's emerging right now. I consider myself a Dungeons and Dragons Sentinel, and I am very much asking you to be a Dungeons and Dragons Sentinel. And if you're still listening to this channel, I believe you are part of the stalwart remnant who is still willing to speak the name of Dungeons and Dragons publicly, still willing to buy, own, read, run, and watch Dungeons and Dragons, not apologize for it, and absolutely refuse to be persecuted out of doing those things, right? And so this new group, this Sentinel group, is so basically think of the Dungeon Master before as an animal, right? And I think before Dungeon Masters were horses, like think of a Mustang, right? We were out on the plains, we ran around, and we didn't worry about wolves, right? We didn't worry about wolves, right? And the reason why is if a wolf came up, we'd just kick it in the head, right? Like virtually as a horse, virtually kicks a virtual wolf, right? And we were big enough and safe enough where we're like, Mustangs don't worry about wolves, right? Like, they could just, one hoof to the head and it's done, right? But what we realize now is Dungeons & Dragons has never been safe and never will be safe. And in my humble opinion, the reason for that is it is shockingly clear to everyone now, Dungeons & Dragons is not a game. It is not a role-playing game. That's what OSC is. That's what DCC is. That's what World Beyond Number is. Those are games, just useless husks that you can use to cut a goblin in half, right? But Dungeons & Dragons is something different. It is a powerful element, a catalyst that you can use to cut your own deficiencies in half. It's a tool, right? It's not a game at all. And I think the best description of it is as a role-playing experience. And I think as a community, as a D&D community, we need to separate ourselves from the tabletop role-playing game community and say, we're not really a game at all. We're a role-playing experience. And we don't know what the heck you guys are doing over there. It seems useless and foolish. But over here, we are building the future of human narrative. We're setting up a new model for human evolution, human intellectual evolution. And we are using Dungeons & Dragons as a tool to cut our own deficiencies in half. And we see it as an IRL abstraction tool, right? And so basically, the Dungeon Master, right? We're going to need them, and we're going to need Dungeon Masters there. Designers, they're going to do their part. I don't think there's a threat on that. So I think there's still a line of people to design for Dungeons & Dragons and Hasbro currently. But this new role, this Sentinel, right? We are now changed, and we realize we're not a horse. We're a rabbit, and there are wolves everywhere. And those wolves are howling, and they're coming to literally consume us, right? And so the Sentinel is going to have their rabbit ears up, and when they hear the wolf, when they smell the wolf, when they hear undulations in the community, they're going to be, like, we will never feel safe again, and we can never feel safe again, right? 1983 Satanic Panic, 2023 Manic Panic, two separate groups saying exactly the same thing. D&D be gone, saying we have, 1983, we have a moral standard against TSR, and that means that you are not allowed to buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons. 2023, we have a moral standard against Hasbro, and that means that you are not allowed to buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons, right? So make sure you boycott. Make sure you digitally burn your digital books, right? They stand by while physical books are being burned, right? It's bad. It's bad. It's really, really bad. In my humble opinion, what's happening now is unprecedented. So we're realizing we're not a horse. We're a rabbit, and the Sentinels are like, okay, these Dungeon Masters over there, we need you guys to stay on point and continue running Dungeons & Dragons for a few people who are brave enough to buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons, right? But these Sentinels, they're like, never again, man. We are never, ever, ever going to stop watching for the wolf, because we know we have something that is 1,000 times more valuable than anything found under the copy or banner of the OGLers, the OSR, and the Orc, the retro clones, right? And they told us all along. They told us all along what they were. They're clones, right? Just literally, their creations have no soul, no heart, no joy, no love, no innovation, no value, right? And so you and me, right? We're having to put on the bracers of the Sentinel and say, never, ever again will we assume Dungeons & Dragons is safe. And we will carry it forward, right? And this gets weird, right? I'm an evangelical Christian, so this ain't my first rodeo with texts that people want to burn, right, that need to be protected, right? And I'm a Protestant, but to this day, I understand that the Protestants own a debt to the Catholic Church. And the reason why is they protected the Holy Bible. Guess what? You and me, we got to protect the PHB, right? The DMG, the MM. Because people are literally and figuratively, literally and digitally coming to burn these books, right? Happened in 1983. It's happening right now in 2023. This is real. And the Sentinels have got to Sentinel's going to Sentinel, right? And never again, We won't get fooled again, right? Never am I ever going to assume in my lifetime that D&D is going to be safe, right? And also, before I was trying to bring up dungeon masters, and I did. I've brought up multiple dungeon masters who are far better dungeon masters this day because they sat at my table, right? Multiple, no less than 10, right? Now I got to start raising up sentinels. I got to start raising up people who are going to protect Dungeons and Dragons forever, right? And I'm trying to do that right here, right? And I'm asking you, with respect and kindness and tolerance, I need you to shift from Dungeon Master to D&D Sentinel, right? We need to protect this. We need to make sure that never again are we surprised when the next group comes up and says, D&D be gone, I have a moral standard against X, and that means that you can't buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like, we're always going to be watching. Always going to be watching. Always watching. We ain't getting fooled again. All that is my humble opinion. I am very eager to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.